Welcome to Cold Cap Club. This video is all about what is a cold cap and what is scalp cooling. So a cold cap is the name that we give to a helmet shaped hat that goes on your head if you're going to have something called scalp cooling treatment. Scalp cooling is the name given to the treatment or the method, and the reason people have scalp cooling and wear a cold cap is to try and reduce hair loss during chemotherapy treatment. Now the key thing to know about scalp cooling is it's suitable for everybody if you're being treated for a solid tumour. So that means that people with any type of blood cancers can't choose scalp cooling as an option during treatment, and the reason for that is during your chemotherapy treatment you need to be able to wear a cold cap for the duration of the treatment and for some time before and after. So the number one thing to know about scalp cooling and wearing a cold cap is, does your hospital or medical care provider offer scalp cooling in their hospital, and is it suitable for you? The first thing as we know about is it suitable is what type of cancer you're being treated for and that it's compatible with your type of chemotherapy. The next thing to talk about is different hair types. So across the board, no matter what hair type you've got, scalp cooling is suitable for everybody. I've made another video which kind of looks at afro hair and just giving you a bit more detail about that, but it's something I'm often asked. For example, even if you're a guy and you've got male pattern baldness but you've got some hair in some area, you too can try scalp cooling. So I want to explain to you the idea of how it works, and I'm not going to go into too much detail but just give you enough that hopefully you get a better understanding of the idea of scalp cooling. The idea of wearing a cold cap is to reduce the temperature of your hair follicle by a few degrees, and by doing that the idea is that the metabolic rate, the rate at which the hair cells rejuvenate, slows down. Now this is important because everybody's been asking, well, how does wearing a cold cap work? You're not freezing your head and you're not freezing the follicles, and that's such a big subject, I've made a whole video about that. But what you're doing is reducing the temperature of the follicle down, and the idea is that that helps to prevent the chemotherapy toxins that could interfere with the hair, number one, going to that hair follicle, and two, it slows down that metabolic rate of how the hair functions. And by doing that, the idea is that less hair will be affected and fall out. So hair loss is a commonly known side effect to chemotherapy. It's actually not a side effect for every type of chemotherapy, but most commonly it's one of those things that people do associate with cancer treatment. When you wear a cold cap, it's really important to know that your head will not freeze. The temperature of the cold cap can be very, very cold indeed. And I'm going to explain that temperature to you so you can understand it by telling you a little bit about the different types of leading manufacturers and the different types of cold caps. So there are three very well-known manufacturers of cold caps, and they are Paxman, who are the global leader at the moment, Dignicap, and Penguin cold caps. There are other manufacturers and brands as well, but these three are ones that a lot of people have heard of. Now there are two types of cold caps. One type of cold cap we call a gel system, and this is where a Penguin cold cap, for example, is known for these. And a gel system actually goes into a freezer facility, and inside the cap it has gel packs which freeze, and they actually sometimes are reduced to a very, very cold temperature, going down into the -20s actually. But don't fear, because when that goes on your head it does not freeze your head. In fact, your follicle is only going to reduce down the temperature of your scalp by a few degrees. So even though it will feel very, very cold on your head, your follicles are never going to freeze. Think of it a little bit like if you have an ice pack in a freezer and you have a sandwich. So if you get the ice pack out and you put the sandwich next to it, the ice pack will keep the sandwich cold, but it won't freeze it. To freeze that sandwich, it has to go into the freezer. Your head's not going into the freezer. So two types of cold caps. One, called a manual gel cold cap, which is removed from a freezer and put on your head. You're then free to walk around and get up and down because it's not attached to anything. But normally that cold cap will have to be changed a number of times during your treatment. So for example, some hospitals will have a frozen ice system where the cold cap comes out of, and other hospitals have an actual freezer where they go in. So that's one type, and in fact that was the original type of way that scalp cooling has been done over a number of decades actually. The other type is a machine type, and for example Paxman, and you'll see I've made some videos with Claire Paxman from the Paxman family. Paxman make a machine type, and so do DigniCap, where your cold cap is actually plugged into a machine, and that machine is actually regulating a coolant which is circulating around in the cold cap. So the idea by a machine type is that it actually doesn't have to start off as cold. So most of the machine types are around -4 in temperature. That's the fluid inside the cap. Remember, your head never goes to that temperature. And so when it goes onto your head, of course it feels really cold, but it's not as cold as in the -20s. So what happens is, with the machine type, the cold cap is put on your head and it's attached by a series of tubes which go into a machine, and that machine is constantly making sure your head stays at an optimum temperature to reduce and help to minimise hair loss. So talking about hair loss, I'm asked all the time in my NHS clinics and in my services that I run from the charity I founded, Cancer Hair Care. Will it guarantee my hair won't fall out? How much hair can I expect to lose? That's a really difficult question to answer because everybody's experience is different, but we do expect the vast majority of people to lose some hair during scalp cooling. Now ideally, if the hair does thin, if it doesn't thin in patches, that makes it much easier to manage, because although it can be really scary when you see some of your hair coming out, I'm going to make lots of videos showing you how you can manage that. So what we tend to say is, when you have scalp cooling, it's not about preventing completely hair loss, it's about minimalising it, so reducing it as much as possible. Now, I've worked with people on all ends of the spectrum, from people who actually say they haven't lost as much hair as they normally would, to people that have lost maybe 20 or 30% and it's just thinned mildly, to people who have lost 90% of their hair but actually sometimes continued because those little bits of hair that's sprouting out with maybe a headscarf or a hat over it works for them, and for other people it's not their cup of tea. So in terms of managing your expectations, the only way to find out is to try it. I've made a video for you also about scalp cooling, about how to prepare your hair, looking after your hair during treatment, and all of the subjects that might come up during your scalp cooling experience. So hopefully in this short video I've answered what is a cold cap, what is scalp cooling, and just some basic knowledge and understanding on the different types and how it works. Do remember, you can always comment or ask questions or ask me for a video that you want to make by commenting in my YouTube, on my YouTube channel under the videos. I really want to know what you want to know. It's no problem for me to make short videos answering your questions, and in fact together your questions will help to share with everybody who's coming and looking for support at Cold Cap Club. So I hope that's been helpful. Bye for now, and I look forward to seeing you again.